Hey, I got a joke for you.
What?
Actually, it's a bet. It's a bet.
A bet? Okay.
A bet, yeah. I'll bet $1 because I don't want you to lose your money because I will win this one.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know that I want to say yes.
I bet $1. I can tell you where you got your shoes.
Okay. Where'd I get my shoes?
They're on your feet. Give me my $1.
That's not where I got my shoes.
You got them on your feet. Give me my $1.
Oh, I got that. Well, see, that's just bad grammar.
Give me my $1.
You don't get them on your feet. You have them on your feet.
Okay, I can tell you where you got your shoes. You got them on your feet. Give me my $1.
That's bad grammar, bad English. No.
You're just mad because you owe me $1.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of From Art to Atoms.
The Ultimate Curiosity Show.
I'm Brandon Shoemaker.
This is Michael. It's a Friday night, and we've worked all week, and Brandon has been... This is show week for him at work. They did 2 performances of Noises Off Wednesday and Thursday, and he's got 2 more tomorrow, a matinee and a evening performance, so he's exhausted.
Yeah.
And I'm here. Like I said, it's Friday, and I'm energized.
Yeah, I don't know why. You normally every Friday you are like, I'm going to bed, nobody talk to me, but you are like bouncing off the walls tonight, which is it's refreshing. It's a nice change.
Is that Red Bull I drank this morning?
From this morning?
Yeah, it's still in my system.
I don't think that's how it works.
I don't know.
Well, I came home and took a much needed nap today. So
I took the husband out for a date and we had sushi. That could be why I'm happy.
Because you had sushi?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I had the same sushi for lunch, so I can't complain. But yeah, so it's been a busy week for me. So we really haven't had a lot of time to... I'm a theater teacher, by the way. That's why I'm doing shows. I don't think we've ever said that on here before, have we?
You're the theater director, not just the teacher. You also are a director of the program, which is a lot more responsibility than just being the teacher.
It is true. Although, well, we only have 3 people in our department, so it's not like it's not like anybody's just sitting around only teaching and then going home at the end of the day.
Yep.
But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so that the whole, I guess one aspect of what we're going to talk about tonight is something that we've really kind of shied away from.
Yeah.
You know, we did not want it to become, both of us being teachers, we did not want this to become a teacher or an education-centered podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
But we've decided to go ahead and 7 episodes in, we're going to go ahead and try one.
Well, yeah.
Not so much on the teaching side, but more on. Cut that out, please.
Oh, well.
Do you promise?
I don't know. It's turning into a bit now, so maybe I'll have to leave it in.
Oh, no. Take the aunt out.
Aunt.
But we are going to go ahead and discuss our, I guess not our philosophies, but our point of view, our opinions on standardized testing and also grading.
Yeah, which gets less into the daily teaching side of things and more on the political side / administrative side.
Yeah, definitely decisions made above our pay grade, above our head.
Right. But it doesn't mean that we, because it's above our pay grade, we don't have an opinion on it and that it's not an important opinion that is worthy of being voiced. And so since we do have this platform, we figured, why the heck not? Because after all, this is supposed to be a podcast about everything. And so education is a part of everything. So here we are finally talking about it.
So, yeah.
So yeah, let's just get started with, the issue with standardized testing that we both have is that in education, standardized testing has sort of taken over the game. And I use the term game intentionally as well there because that's going to come into play a factor in just a bit, as we'll discuss. But standardized testing has become the focus really in a lot of subjects, in a lot of schools, and in a lot of states where, teachers aren't free to actually teach true content anymore. Really, all they're doing is teaching test prep for whatever their state's standardized test is that they push heavily for that grade level and for that subject area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really an issue because, from our perspective, students aren't learning nearly as much as what they used to, and not nearly as much as what they could be. And so we want to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into that, and why it is what it is, where the problem came from, and our approach, at least, to how we think it could be solved and fix the issue.
That also, as a note,
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, being a theater teacher, does not have standardized tests on his content anymore.
Correct.
But as an English teacher,
I used to for years. I taught English before I started teaching theater, and even when I first started teaching theater, I was teaching both English and theater at the same time. So even though I'm out of the realm of tested subject areas now, it still holds a very significant place in my educational philosophy, because it was a big influence on my classroom for so many years. And Michael, teaching biology and other sciences, is of course one of the core content areas that is tested.
Yeah. So in most states, biology or life sciences is the only tested science at the secondary level, at the 9 through 12 level. So usually testing starts up in third grade, and your students are tested every single year, definitely in math and English.
Yeah.
And I say English, I guess I should say ELA, English Language Arts, because that includes reading and literature, plus mechanics or writing. And so 3 through 8, those grades are tested every single year. But then once you get to the secondary level, it's by course as opposed to grade. So certain courses where we're at in Texas, and also in Arkansas where I'm at now, it's by subject. So like I said, life sciences and biology are, at least for Texas and for Arkansas, the only two sciences at the secondary level that are tested. So my students are tested every single year. And one of the biggest things I have about that is that my performance as an educator is judged based on my students' performance on one test given one day out of the year. So, and then the school also is judged based on standardized test scores for those certain subjects. So while we have teachers that teach art and teach theater and teach music and everything like that, from the fine arts and even sports with athletics, those teachers are also judged as a whole based on our performance for the core subjects, which is English, math, social studies, and science. So it's really, the fundamental flaw with standardized testing is that it isn't any kind of true measure of learning. And let's just get to a very philosophical point that we have to really address before we can dive into standardized testing. And that's the fact that when you think about learning, it's not quantifiable. It's not something that can truly be measured. You might as well ask someone how much they love their child. They can come up with all these qualitative descriptors to express how much they love their child, but ultimately that's not something you can count. And learning is the same way. It's a qualitative aspect of the human condition that isn't something that we can truly count. So then why do we bother trying to count it then? Well, to get at that answer, you have to really look at the fact that that's where politics comes into play, because ultimately learning is a very complex thing that you really can't understand unless you do have a degree in the subject. And you have politicians who are involved in all of the policy making for education, and politicians don't want to know the minutia of what learning is truly all about and what it involves and how you actually look at the effectiveness of teaching and learning. They want a spreadsheet that they can look at and point to numbers to say this group is better than this group, which also is flawed logic, because when you're talking about learning, everybody learns in a different way. And so you can't accurately say that anybody is better than anybody else at learning, because again, it's almost like saying this person is better at loving
than this other person.
Well, I was going to say, what you just said, you're talking about like the government in control of everything and they just want numbers. Reminds me of like a CEO. And I say that because a CEO is so detached and has been detached from the level of worker that is the productivity worker. Just like the government and those in charge are so detached from the teacher or the frontline people in education that they are the decision makers but have no sense of connection to those that they're making decisions for.
Maybe that's part of, not to put the cart way before the horse here, but maybe that's part of the solution. Maybe we need our politicians to kind of do like that show Undercover Boss, where they actually go in and, experience what life is like as a teacher.
Well, no, and that's not even that. I think they should go in as a substitute.
Oh, yeah.
Not even as a teacher.
Oh, yeah, because before you can even approach the learning environment, you have to look at the fact that
look at the environment itself. Yeah,
issues.
Just the environment itself of what is the environment of a room of kids, and not just a room of kids, but we're talking 26 and 27 kids, and at our level, teenagers at the elementary level, balls of energy.
Exactly. And I will say, to that end, to give them credit, the school district where I used to work at in South Carolina, Rock Hill Schools, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, last year they had such a significant substitute shortage that I don't know whose idea it was, but the school board members all agreed to serve as substitutes.
Well, whoever's idea it was, give that man a raise.
Well, exactly, because I think that is, a true authentic measure, or not measure, excuse me, but that is a true authentic experience for politicians to actually have, to gain some actual informed opinions about school and schooling.
Yeah.
So as you can tell, we're both very passionate about this subject, and so we're going to try our best in post to make sure that this episode doesn't last 2 hours, and
it's also not a gripe session.
Exactly. So there are a number of things that we could do in terms of just complaining, but
well, let me jump in here really fast. And on that note, let's just say that we will give our opinions on that negative, but also the ways both of us have approached trying to not fix it, but trying to either work around or try to improve certain aspects of grading and grading systems in our classrooms, because both of us have different viewpoints and ideas about how to fix that as well.
Yeah.
And we've definitely, because we don't agree with it, we've definitely looked into it and researched different techniques to kind of see if we can improve our own classroom practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's important for every classroom teacher to realize, acknowledge, and embrace the autonomy that you do have. And we realize that, every school, every district, every state is going to have a different level of that autonomy. Some, it's going to be very, very constricted. And for those of you, I truly feel for you. I have been there before in situations where it is incredibly constricted and it's not pleasant. But for those of you who are fortunate enough to have a little more freedom and a little more leeway in what happens in your classroom, take that as an opportunity and really explore some of these ideas that we've come across and find other ideas of your own. Okay, so let's start out with, first off, the concept of standardized testing has been around forever. Did you know that standardized testing actually began in America before the Civil War?
No.
Yeah, I found that out today when I was doing show prep, but it didn't truly become the monster that it is until, of course, the 20th century. And it really kind of began with a few different tests. Do you remember the Stanford Binet?
No.
Oh, you never took that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, we took that in elementary school. I remember that was the first, because it was called the Stanford Achievement Test, which is SAT. And so for the longest time, I thought I had been taking the SAT from the second grade. So yeah, not the SAT Scholastic Aptitude Test, but the Stanford Achievement Test was what we took when we were in elementary school.
See, so that's different for me because I'm used to, in Louisiana, they give the LEAP test, which is the Louisiana Educational Assessment Program test in grades 3 through 8. And I remember even in the mid 80s growing up, we took LEAP every single year.
LEAP then too.
Yeah, until high school. And then at high school level, we had graduation exit exams.
Yeah. Well, see, South Carolina, the test names changed so many times in a very short amount of time, too. We had the Stanford test. After that, we had the high school exit exam when I was in high school. Then that turned into HSAP, which was the high school assessment program, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became end of subject test.
Mm-hmm. Subject specific test, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or end of course test.
Yeah.
And then now they've done away with the exit exam in South Carolina altogether, and now they just take the ACT, which I do think is at least one step in the right direction. If you're going to make everybody take a test before the end of high school, at least let it be a test that's going to be somehow applicable to something else.
But it's not.
Exactly.
Because if you're not going to college and you're going to, let's say, trade school or anything like that,
okay, well,
ACT is not.
Well, that's why they also have to take ACT work keys, which are you familiar with work keys?
Yes, we do work keys.
Yeah.
But is that the option other than can they take one or the other?
I don't remember. I think they take both. I think everybody takes work keys and the big shebang, the real ACT.
Okay.
It's been a few years now, and
Yeah.
I was already, when they started doing that, it was my last year teaching English, and that was teaching freshman English, so I wasn't involved.
So I guess the biggest thing for me right now, the biggest notice, I guess, in shift in our modern schools right now is, in 2002 when No Child Left Behind was enacted as a law.
Right.
And federal government then came in and said, hey, look, states, we're setting a federal mandate that you as a school, as a state, have to meet these requirements. And so that No Child Left Behind Act really took a lot of power away from the local and the state level and made it a federal issue. And they implemented, that schools would have to be at a certain level of performance, teachers would have to be, and so would students, and that the standardized test was a major component of that score.
Yeah.
And so we're 22 years into this. So we've had a whole generation of students come out of schools built on nothing but test. So what we've seen as educators is that there's an increase in number of students with test anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
There's a decrease in learning because teachers are teaching to the test. Meaning, like Brandon suggested earlier, not only are they teaching the specific content that's going to be tested, but also they spend more time on test-taking strategies rather than on just learning the content. And that we lose days. When we test at a school level, the entire campus is shut down.
Yeah.
And we lose days. And I know that our school district right now, I think we have 11 or 12 days this year of testing. And that is practice test, interim test to gauge where you're at certain points throughout the year to get feedback and I guess to kind of make a game plan of where you can go to improve. So we're losing time focusing on these tests.
Well, and our school district is even worse because they have, in addition to the state mandated tests, we also have district benchmark tests, which are given, I don't even know what the frequency is.
Is it those 4 times, I think?
It's
twice every, no.
Yeah.
Is it twice every semester?
I think so. So on top of what the state's requiring, the district, thinking that this is going to help improve test scores, is making teachers give benchmarks towards those standardized tests.
Which I will tell you right now, as a person who has been in a testing room watching students and with them, the more tests we give, by the time they get to the actual test, they do not care.
No.
They are ready to get it over with. They answer whatever they can, and they are done. And I will tell you also that we've had comments from students when we test them. They think that the practice test is the actual test.
Yeah.
And they get confused and don't try hard at all on the real test.
Yeah.
And another thing about the testing is that the window for testing every single year is getting earlier and earlier and earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, state testing was the 2nd or 3rd week in May.
Yeah.
And now, I know for Texas, the window is mid-April now.
Mm-hmm. I think it starts in early April.
Right. And so now you're not only losing time, because once the state test is done, as a teacher, the kids are finished.
Yeah.
It does not matter what you're trying to get them to do. They are finished once that state test is done because they know the importance of the state test. And they realize that once basically, it's like if you're getting contracted for a job, once you get paid, you're done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you still have 3 more weeks of work to do. And with the test getting sooner and sooner, we're not looking at 3 weeks now. We're looking at 6 weeks after the test of school still to continue.
Yeah.
And so it's gotten more and more difficult as a classroom teacher to really engage and keep them focused after their state test is finished.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing that I want to point out. When we talk about standardized testing, if it were just standardized testing that were given across the board in a state or in the nation even, that'd be one thing. But they have escalated to what we call high stakes testing, which means that the test is tied to whether or not that student passes. If it's end of course testing, it's tied to whether or not they pass the course. If it's end of grade testing, it's tied to whether or not they pass the grade level and are promoted to the next.
I was going to say it's promotion more so, advancement and promotion. Not, I guess the term passing is not relevant anymore. It's more of an advancement or promotion.
Exactly.
So if they don't pass a certain percentage their tests, they will not be promoted. Or if they are promoted, they're promoted, but with, I guess, a stipulation, right? Of tutorials, and at the high school level they're put in tutorials, which is just another 30 minutes of reminding the kid that, hey, you either didn't try or you are definitely
it's awful
not intellectually
exactly. Even though I'm teaching theater, so the way our school does it in Texas, it's we have an enrichment period, and there were so many incoming freshmen who failed their 8th grade STAR test. Is it the STAR test at the middle school level? Is it
it's
STAR?
3 through 8.
Yeah. So they failed their STAR test, and they have what's called House Bill 4545 in Texas, which mandates that.
Is it 30 hours of tutoring?
I think so. I forget the exact number, but it mandates that you have to go through a specific amount of remediation, which the students perceive as nothing but punitive. They just see it as a punishment because in their mind, they see it as a punishment for being dumb. And all that's doing is browbeating them down to hating school, really. And, that's what we're talking when we say when we say high stakes testing. They have these high stakes associated with whether or not they pass a test. And at the end of the day, if you are sick, if you have had at the high school level, this is always an issue. If you've had a breakup with your boyfriend, if you had no breakfast that morning because you were running late, 1,000 different factors can lead to somebody having a bad test day before you even approach the fact of some students just having test anxiety. There are too many factors that lead into whether or not that student just did poorly on that one test day. And it's, even that factor aside, it's not an accurate measure of anything.
Right. Let's say that you're at a job and you have a job performance coming up, a job performance review coming up.
Yeah.
And your entire year of work, whether it be good or bad, is judged solely on this one performance that day, that review. And so let's say that, something happens in your life and it just happens to fall on that day. Should you be judged on the entire year's worth of good work because you had a bad day and that just happened to be the day that coincides with your review? As an employer, a good employer would take into account everything that's done. It's not just a one-day thing. It's an overall view. And you mentioned something about loving your child and stuff like that earlier, and it got me thinking, if you had to basically say, how much do you love your child?
Yeah.
And let's say that you only got one day to measure how much you love your child. And your love is being judged on that one day.
Yeah.
Well, let's say that little Johnny just happens to be a holy terror that day. Do you love him? Yes. Are you frustrated with him? Yes.
Are you going to be able to demonstrate how much you love him accurately on that day?
No. And that's high stakes testing for us as teachers.
Yeah.
That's what it is for the kids. It is taking what they've done all year long and not caring about any kind of goodwill towards their studies or any kind of
effort.
Yeah. It's not taking any kind of effort displayed throughout the entire year, or not even effort, but growth.
Right. Yeah. As soon as I said effort, I was like, wait, that's the wrong term.
You could be at a 50 at the beginning of the year and be at a 55 at the end. And that +5 shows growth. It might not be at a certain level of passing, but you have improved, and it doesn't count into any of that at all.
Exactly. And that's I'm glad you mentioned that, because effort, too many times when we think about effort, we think of, oh, well, we're just giving them grades for showing up, or like a participation trophy essentially. And that's not what we're talking about at all either. But effort is something that has to be taken into account, because if little Johnny doesn't try, that may be a big factor that's leading to why he's not learning as much as he can. Whereas if Johnny is trying his butt off but still doesn't perform well, then we know that there's something more there. And that's where we can look at things like, does he maybe have a learning disability or something like that needs to be explored, or some other factors that are impeding his success.
Right. And so then one thing that states could do when they are looking at standardized tests is take away the labels that you get based on certain scores.
Yeah.
And focus more on the growth. Because I'll tell you again, at the high school level, if they're tested from 3rd grade to 8th grade and they've performed poorly every single year, by the time they come to us at 9th grade, they've been beat down so much.
Yeah.
They've lost the interest in school. They've been told basically subconsciously that they're dumb.
Yep.
And that there is no way I can learn what I have to learn. So the growth mindset of, can I change and can I learn with practice, does not apply to them, because they've been beat down so much that's it. They are done for life.
Yeah.
And they feel so defeated by the time they get to us. So if the states would focus on growth rather than a label of being a certain percentage, and growth being a percent itself, so you've increased by 25%, that is more positive and more encouraging to a child than being defined by a label of not approaching grade level.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned labeling too, because that's another symptom of American education being controlled by the government. Because and even though, we talked about No Child Left Behind, even though No Child Left Behind was replaced in 2015 by ESSA,
right,
it's still flawed. It's a little bit better, but it's still a flawed system that is focusing on all the wrong things. Ultimately, looking at labels, looking at test scores is a means of simplification for third parties. And in our case that we're talking about here, these third parties are political entities. They want to see things, like I said, boiled down to a spreadsheet or boiled down to a pie chart to simplify a complex task. Admirable in the business world, but guess what, folks? Education is not a business. Well, correction, it is very much a business, but learning is not something that fits into any kind of a business model. And ultimately, what we're talking about is you can't quantify learning. And because of that, think about it. School and education, that's the only place that we do this sort of thing anyway. Go back to your analogy about the job performance. You look at a person's product or work habits over the course of a year in a performance review. It's not a matter of sitting down and giving them arbitrary numbers and assigning these specific criteria to a number system. Now, some may try to do that, but I would argue that probably the better ones involve sitting down and having a conversation with that employee to see where they are versus where they started or where they were last year, and getting an understanding of their growth as an employee from that conversation, as well as from firsthand observation by the employer. This is how you actually do education right. It's the same thing. You don't administer a whole bunch of tests and try to come up with a number for each of that. Essentially, what we have done in America and in other countries in the world as well have done this too, who have followed any kind of model based on U.S. education. We have taught them how to play the game of school.
Mm-hmm.
Educational theorist and lifelong educator P.L. Thomas wrote a book that was literally titled Numbers Games, that is all about how American education has tried to reduce learning to a number, all for, essentially for the sake of politicians, so that they can say, hey, we're better than you. And essentially, think about it. It's obvious that we have turned it into a game because the students know how to play the game. How many times have you heard a student who has come to you and asked, okay, what would my grade be if I didn't turn this in? Or what would my grade be if I only got a 50 on this test?
Mm-hmm.
They aren't asking, they're not focused on their genuine, their authentic learning of the subject. They are gaming the system.
Mm-hmm.
They are looking at, okay, what is the number that I have to make in order to get this outcome, this grade? They're not learning biology. They're not learning English. They are learning how to play the game of school that we as a society, as a system, have created.
Yep.
And that's all they're learning. They're learning the life skill of gaming the system.
Yep.
And so, that gets to kind of the heart of the matter of what Michael and I, and even more so I, have kind of come to adopt, which is the fact that grading at all is reductive. That putting a number on something that is a work product of a student is diminutive, it's reductive, it's demeaning. Because think about this, if you have a job in advertising, okay? Or if you have a job in, let's say, theater, okay? Any kind of job really out there, if you have to produce a product and then somebody assigns you a number to that work, how demeaning is that? They've taken your hard work. Think about an artist. I don't really like that one that much, so that only gets a 50 for me. I'm in my spare time, when I have spare time, I'm an abstract painter. Michael's not a fan of abstract art for the most part.
Mm-mm.
Okay. What would you quote unquote grade my painting as?
You wouldn't pass.
Exactly. Because that's
subjective.
Yeah, it's subjective, but so is all grading. All grading is subjective, no matter how, sorry, math teachers, you folks too, no matter which way you slice it, all grading is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's still up to you to determine what the point value is,
mm-hmm.
how, whether or not with math, if you're going to give partial credit for showing their work, things like that. So all of that is still subjective, and ultimately grading is meaningless, really. It's not. And so what's the solution to that? The solution is portfolios of work. Have the students do the same things you would normally have them do, but instead of slapping a number or a letter on there and saying, there's your result, do a portfolio review of all that work. And this is something that has become even more apparent to me now teaching theater as opposed to English, although it should have been just as obvious in English. I cannot grade. How many parents do you think would be beating down my classroom door if I gave their student an authentic, quote unquote, grade on their performance of a monologue, when clearly some people are going to perform a monologue better than others?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing where everybody can get, quote unquote, 100. So what do I have to do? I won't go into the extent. I make it up, quite frankly.
Oh,
I make up the numbers.
Call the teaching police. There we go.
Exactly. Because I'm sorry, the grades are meaningless to me.
Well, let's go back to your portfolio example. So I want you to think of an artist. So if you are an artist, let's say that you were learning sculpting.
Yeah.
Your first sculpture, your first sculpture is not going to be your best work.
No.
But over time, do you improve as you learn the skill?
Yeah.
That's what grading should be.
Exactly.
It should not be a numerical game. It should be growth over time.
Yeah.
Learning mastery over the skills that you are supposed to learn.
Exactly. I can't make a student perform a monologue and give them a grade on it. I have to have them perform that monologue, give them feedback,
right?
Have them do it again and again and again, and then quote unquote grade them based on their final performance,
right,
compared to what they did the first time around.
And so let's go ahead and talk. So where I'm at in my district, and so if you don't know about education, but we are required by board policy to have a certain number of grades. I know both in Texas at Brandon's district and at mine in Arkansas, we are required to have a certain number of grades in a certain amount of time. And I know where Brandon's at, that's 2 grades a week.
Yeah.
And
because we're on a 6-week grading period.
And they're also on a A-B schedule, which means he sees half his kids on one day and half his kids the next day. So there are some weeks he only sees his kids twice.
Yeah.
That's a Tuesday and a Thursday. And if you have to get 2 grades in a week, that means he's got to give a grade every single time he sees them that week, which is not enough really by numbers to really assess if they've even had time to master anything you've taught them.
Yeah.
So when he says make things up, he's got to make a grade up, not because he wants to, but because he's being forced to by the parameters that are set in place by those that are in charge of making decisions about grading that don't have any connection to the classroom, or have been out of the classroom for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have to have 2 grades per week also. But I see my kids 5 times a week. So I see my kids every single day. So it's a little bit easier for me to do that. But really, in all honesty,
even that's too much.
And I will say that grading also, the way education pedagogy is going, is that we're getting away from summative assessments, which is basically kind of like an end of unit test or an end of chapter test kind of thing. And looking at more formative assessments, where we are basically in the moment assessing whether or not they know what their skill is and modifying how we teach or modifying what direction we go in based on how they're performing. And so that formative by nature is not supposed to be graded. It is simply a measure and a guide for you to go ahead and move or steer the class in a direction. Let's say that, so if I formatively assess my students and they're not getting it, as a teacher, I have the responsibility to go back and reteach or teach in a different way or use different examples to kind of get it to them to understand it. And so at that point, I can't assess them and give a grade to that because they don't know what they're supposed to know yet.
Yeah.
And so putting a numbers game on teachers at the district level and at the state level, you are tying our hands to give them inflated imitation grades that really mean nothing at all.
Well, exactly. And you know, the number of indirect directives that we get that essentially want us just to pass the students along anyway is ridiculous. And every year they become more and more plentiful. It is, and I mean, and quite frankly, I don't have a problem with it because you know, I think retention is punitive as well for factors that are beyond actual learning. The fundamental thing that pisses me off is the fact that we do all of this, and we, I say the collective as in society and more specifically as in the government, we do all of this to be able to rank people, to rank states, to rank students, to rank countries. You know, everybody looks to Finland as the paragon of standardized testing. You know what Finland does? They don't care about the test. That's how they're at the top of the tests. They don't care. Their test scores are incidental. Or excuse me, they're not incidental, but they are unimportant. They're not the focus. In Finland, they focus on strategies like formative assessment. They focus on iterative processes in learning. So you're looking at learning something and refining it, not you do it once and then you have the grade, which is so, oh my gosh, it's so frustrating to me because we teach students that that's the expectation. You're supposed to be able to do something on the first try and excel at it. When do we ever, as humans, do something on the first try, do it right, let alone do it well? And that's one of the, it became super obvious to me last year teaching theater because I had a handful of students who, again, it's theater. It's very subjective. It's not a matter of ever being able to do something once and be able to knock it out of the park. That's just not the nature of theater. Even when you think someone has done that, they've done that through a long series of refinement that they've had to do on that monologue or that scene or whatever it is. But I had students that were frustrated beyond belief at me last year because I was asking them to do things that were beyond their comprehension in school in terms of asking them to think for themselves. And because I wasn't giving them exactly what I was looking for, I wanted them to discover it for themselves and on their own and with their own choices as actors. And they couldn't fathom that. They couldn't understand that. And I mean, to the point of tears, where they couldn't understand why I wasn't just giving them what they wanted. In theater is what we call a line reading, where I basically, say it with this kind of inflection. And the reason we don't is because that leads to inauthentic acting and it doesn't read well on stage. The actor has to find that emotion for themselves and figure out how they're going to portray that vocally and physically, where these students wanted to have a very specific, on this word, I turn here and I do my hand like this. They wanted that kind of instruction because that's what they are set up for with everything else we teach them in school. You give them these specific cookie cutter things that fit into these specific molds, and then they're able to repeat it and they get 100. Mm-hmm. That's what they're used to. They're used to that with every subject. And that's not authentic learning. No. That's learning how to cram for a test. How many times have you yourself had to learn material for a rote test, an ROTE test, that you crammed for, did well enough on the test, and then immediately forgot it?
Delete was pressed in my brain.
Exactly. It's because you never authentically learned it in the first place. You memorized it long enough to be able to regurgitate it. It was never internalized. It was never something that you authentically learned.
Right.
And so that's what we teach them. We teach them how to game the system that way, how to take a test and cram for it that shows no authentic learning.
Okay. So now that we've gotten all the bitching out of the way, because I think we could go on for more and more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let's steer clear of that now. Let's kind of deviate and move to the more positive aspect of it. So what we're doing is working within the confines of our own classrooms and what we have to work with and trying to change it up as much as we can. So one thing that I'm doing is a new curriculum that I am implementing this year in my bio class focuses more on skills and engineering practices and those skills that the kids need for problem solving, communicating, refining, all those different things, and using those and teaching those as opposed to the content. Yeah. It's teaching the skills, but using the content as an avenue to teach the skills. And so their final test in my classroom is going to be what we call a transfer task. So their end of unit test is a transfer test where they're taking what they've learned and applying that to a new situation that's similar to what they've learned, but completely different situation, where they have to demonstrate that they understand what's going on in a different context. So it's not memorization of facts. It's not memorization of data. It is learning the skill and truly learning it with understanding to then move on to the next thing and transfer it to another situation. So that's one way that science teachers are actually moving towards. And if you're a parent, you're going to see this in your science classrooms. And I'm not going to say if they're a good teacher, because not all good teachers are going to do this, and not all bad teachers are going to do this. But if your teacher is really, if your science teacher is really trying to advance and move in the direction of true science, they're going to end up doing this. And so I will tell you right now, we are 4.5 weeks in. My kids are struggling because they're not used to it being all on them. They need to figure out the problem. I am just guiding them through the problem.
Well, exactly.
And just like an engineer or a scientist or a doctor, there's a problem that we present to them, and they need to gather the data and gather all of the different aspects of it. They need to find patterns in the data we're giving them, and they're analyzing stuff and they're communicating with each other. And they are struggling because they're so used to what we call sit and get, where they basically sit and the teacher does all the work for them and they get it. Well, we find that they're not getting it. And so we're focusing more, like I said, on the skill as opposed to the content. The content is embedded in the skill, but they're learning it through that skill that we're teaching. And so really, in this aspect, the student is responsible for all the work. The teacher is just guiding them through it, but they're the ones coming up with the questions. They're the ones coming up with the possible solutions. They're the ones coming up with all these different things. And not only that, but they're sharing it with each other. And they're learning from each other, not from me, but from each other.
Yeah.
Which is great. And so I, as a science teacher, am very pleased with the way my new curriculum is going in that aspect. And I think over time, the kids will also see that. They're struggling. They're growing pains right now for them. But their minds are starting to be reshaped.
Yeah.
And we're looking at plasticity with the mind to the point where we are reshaping how they think and how they are approaching school. It's no longer the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Because I will also tell you that our state test has changed in the past 2 years in Arkansas. And it is going more to skill-based test with embedded content, not just can you dish out the facts.
Right.
And so we've had to modify our teaching methods to not adapt to the test, but adapt to the way we want them to learn. And for once, the test is adapting to the way we are teaching in our classrooms.
Good.
So it is adapting to the teacher, not the teacher adapting to the test. So that's one thing about standardized tests that we are changing.
That's definitely a step in the right direction. I wish more, ultimately I wish we would do away with the standardized tests altogether, but I definitely think that's a step in the right direction at least, while still staying within the mold.
So then the other thing is grading. So let's talk about grading. Like I said, I have to get 18 grades in every 9 weeks.
Real quick, press pause on that, because what I want to follow up on what you just described in your discussion of your approach. What essentially you're describing is what is the true STEM or STEAM model of teaching, which science, technology, engineering, and math. For STEAM, add in the A for arts. And there are many schools that will call themselves a STEAM or STEM school, but what they mean by that is not the true STEAM or STEM method. What they mean is they're going to emphasize science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yes, which basically when people think of that, they think robotics.
Yeah, exactly. And the true STEM methodology is intended to be embraced in all the subject areas. And it's a matter of teaching and learning as an iterative process rather than as the sit and get. And it's about, because again, it's trying to retrain students into seeing failure as a good thing and as a learning opportunity, as opposed to seeing it as I suck at this content, or I suck as a human being because I didn't get 100 on this or whatever. It teaches them that it teaches them that, anything it's always a process. It's a cycle. STEM talks about the design process, and that's really at the core of how that teaching methodology is approached. And I absolutely love it. When I first learned about it, as I always like to say, I very quickly drank the Kool-Aid on STEM and STEAM, because it made sense, especially when I was teaching English, because I never expected a student to write an essay and I would grade it. Thankfully, again, I mentioned him before, P.L. Thomas, he was also my high school English teacher. That is how he taught us, was we would write an essay, he would mark it, and then he would give it back to us and we would rewrite. And we would do this over and over again, all the time, improving grades as we went when we improved what he was pointing out. So yeah, the STEAM model approaches learning and teaching from a cyclical model that allows for growth, for authentic growth, which is the most important thing to actually have authentic learning. Okay, so go ahead with what you were about to start to say earlier about your grading system. You were shifting gears.
Oh, yeah. So how we've approached grading. One thing that I've done in my classroom, again, to kind of shift away from grading, as grading is known to most people, is a couple of years back, I came across a video on YouTube by a teacher, and I'll link the video in our bio on Instagram. And so what she talks about, though, is multiple grading schemes. And so what this is a little bit extra work on the teacher's end at the forefront where you're setting up your spreadsheet. But what it is it's basically taking 3 different grading platforms and applying your students' grades to all 3 platforms, and basically taking whichever one is the higher of the grades. And so what grading schema 1 may look like is it may be more heavily focused on the test, like a summative test, and less so on the daily work or the practice. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it benefits the student who is naturally intelligent, mm-hmm. that is going to perform well on a test, and sees the daily work or the practice as redundant and a waste of time.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the coin, you have the opposite, where the test is not weighted heavily, but more of the daily work is weighted heavily, because this is the student who suffers from test anxiety, who does not do well on test, but puts forth the effort of the practice throughout what you're teaching, mm-hmm. and therefore their kind of daily work would be more an improvement. And so that then puts the focus on the daily work or the growth as opposed to the test. And then the third one is right kind of in the middle, where it is equal test and daily. And, this is for the student who needs a little bit more practice, mm-hmm. but not as much, mm-hmm. but also does moderately well on a test.
Right.
So with 3 different schemas, you have the kid who performs well on a test and doesn't need the daily practice, the kid who does kind of even break on test and daily work, and then the student who does poorly on tests but puts forth the effort on the daily work. And so the kids fall in one of those 3 categories, and with the daily or the multiple schemas, you are just applying their work in all 3 schemas to see how they fare, and whichever one they fall best in, that is the grade ultimately that they will have on the report card.
Yeah.
So it's been a shift, and it's definitely been a challenge, because with having progress reports halfway through the semester for us, or halfway through the 9-week grading period, we have to have so many grades in. The problem is that when you apply those percentages in, the daily work might be heavy and it might look good, or the student who does well on a test might not have a good daily work grade.
Yeah.
So when interim report cards come out, and then that's a different grade than is what is actually reported on the report card. So I've had some kickback a little bit, but I am trying to adjust and modify to benefit my student as opposed to benefiting the system.
Well, and I will say that the system that you're describing really does, it doesn't lend itself to the easiest means of interim or snapshot, where am I standing right now? Because you don't know where they're going to come out in the best scenario until the end of the grading period.
Well, I will tell you this. So the one way that I've approached this is definitely open communication to parents on the forefront.
Right.
So
and I will say that's always going to be policy or best practice number 1 is always let your parents know when you're doing something new and different.
Correct. And so what I've done, though, is I've tried to let them know up front, but then also making the students accountable for tracking their own grades. So that way they have access to the spreadsheet and they're tracking their own grades too.
Yeah.
And if not tracking, at least they have view rights to see the spreadsheet, mm-hmm. as well as the parents. So the parents can log in to check the spreadsheet anytime they want to and see a live report of their grades. So that way they understand. And again, as long as they know up front that you're grading from this and it's the benefit of their student, mm-hmm. I've not had a parent that say, no, I don't want it that way.
Right.
Because it's to the benefit of the student and their learning abilities, not, again, the system.
Right.
And so as long as they understand that and they're monitoring the correct thing, because like in both of our cases with districts, parents have a portal that they can check grades on 24 hours a day, anytime they log in. And so they're used to going to that portal to check grades. But if they see my spreadsheet, that's going to be their check there. So again, it's just a matter of being very clear with parents and very open with the policy of how I'm doing it and letting them know up front, this is going to benefit your student.
Yeah.
As opposed to the system that's designed not to.
Exactly. And, and that's parent communication is key. Like I said, anytime you're doing something that's novel, that's new, that's outside the box, because if parents aren't in the know, you're going to get pushback automatically. And it's going to be a hard uphill battle. Several years ago my grading structure is different now as a theater teacher as opposed to when I taught English. But several years ago now, I did a sort of a classroom experiment with the blessing of my administration. I had a great supportive administration. I wrote this big proposal to create a gradeless classroom where you don't give numbers or letters to assignments, again, because they are all reductive and demeaning to the work, and instead base their final grade on portfolio review. And my principal, he agreed with all the research that I showed him. His only issue was, he wanted me to have some way. He wanted the parents to have some way to know where their student stands, which, is understandable, especially when we're used to these systems that they can check on a daily basis or hourly basis if they want to see, what their grades are. And essentially his solution for that was to do essentially a system of satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And so I adopted that, and I did that for a year. But essentially what I found myself doing was I had to create a system of satisfactory, unsatisfactory, but then also a middle of the road grade, which I forget what the name was or the label that I gave it was, but that's ultimately what it was. It was just a different means of labeling the work, which was kind of defeating the purpose. Now teaching theater, it's much easier for me to adapt a system like that to the stuff that I'm doing with my classes, because ultimately with a good theater program, or, well, I won't say a good theater program, with my theater program, with a lot of theater programs I know, the classes are designed to support the productions that the school does. And so that's how we do. So there are frequently, there are some days where we are just all hands on deck to do the work of the show, whether that means swinging lights and focusing them in the right area and having students stand on stage so that we can see, things like that. And for that, we give them practicum grades, which is, a grade for just doing the work of the theater, whatever that may be on that given day. And that has been really beneficial. When you do have to give a grade, they're learning, they're doing authentic hands-on work in theater, but it's not something that you can necessarily define because every student may be doing a different task. So doing the practicum grades has been a great solution for that.
Yeah.
I'm still, so years ago, there was, when I first learned about the gradeless classroom approach, there was a book called Assessment 3.0 by Mark Barnes that I was introduced to, and that I subsequently introduced Michael to, though he doesn't have a recollection that I was the one who introduced him to this book.
Hey, I read a lot of education books, so.
I read a lot. But the basis of this book is all on giving authentic feedback to students, and instead of just assigning a number to it, but giving meaningful feedback on the work so that they know what they did well, they know what they still need to improve upon, and giving them feedback on how to improve that as well. For, going back to the English curriculum for a minute here, that means on an essay, not telling them you need a comma here, but telling them you have a run-on sentence. And then they have to learn how to fix that. And then, it becomes a dialogue. And that goes on, again, for sometimes many iterations before they fully master all the different things that you pointed out to them. But it's that process, that silent conversation between teacher and student from the feedback and the resultant work.
Mm-hmm.
That's what shows the authentic learning. And in theater, it's the same way, because it's a matter of, we do acting workshops where they perform a monologue. I stop them 2 lines in and say, okay, no, we need to make an adjustment here, or try this differently. And then they do it again, and so on and so forth. And they do that. Sometimes it'll take us 20 minutes to get through one student's monologue, because it's an iterative process like that. But it shows authentic growth. And that's ultimately the only true, quote unquote, measure for authentic learning, is observing growth, which goes back to what we said at the beginning.
Yep.
So what's our summative point? What do we want our summative point to be on standardized testing and grading and learning?
Okay, so here's mine. So I think standardized testing are good, but I don't think it should be high stakes, and I don't think that there should be much prevalence put into it. I think it's a good thing to know where your kids are at, but it should not be used the way it's being used. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I have to disagree, just because I don't put any weight in standardized testing, just because it's another reductive approach to try to categorize students and learners, and to say that they have met or exceeded or have not met expectations.
Let me preference that, though, with it's good to be useful to hold educators accountable to their jobs, but should not be used as the only source of that accountability on teacher and student.
Well, see, I disagree with that too, because whether or not a student learns and how that student learns is not necessarily a sign of an effective teacher or an ineffective teacher.
Which is why I said that it should be used, but it should not be the sole or the only way you would use to determine their effectiveness.
Okay.
Which is what I said. I think it's a tool, but it should not be the only tool that's used, which it is now today. It is the only tool that is used to judge teacher effectiveness as well as student learning.
Yeah.
And again, I say that it should not be the only tool. There should be many different facets. Learning is not a one tool thing. Yeah. Teaching is not a one tool thing either.
I think, I much more prefer the Finland model, where, doing well on the standardized tests is just incidental. It's just, oh, well, that's great. Doesn't really matter, but, okay. Because I truly believe learning is an individual process that varies from each student to each student. And there's no way of measuring that, which is ultimately what standardized tests seek to do. And in terms of grading, again, I believe that it's best to not grade, but to, review portfolios of work and look at the work samples as a product of learning. I think you do have products of learning that you can look at, but to label it with a number or a letter is reductive to the learning and does not reflect what that growth may be for that student.
Right.
Awesome. Well, in the spirit of general education and general knowledge, let's do our trivia segment tonight with Trivial Pursuit questions. How about that?
Oh, God. Okay.
Let me grab the book. Okay. So, as a refresher, your choices are geography, entertainment, history, arts and literature, science and nature.
Science!
I was about to say, gee, I wonder which one he's going to choose. Or sports and leisure.
We know it's not going to be that one.
Yeah. So, science?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, Jesus, there's Latin on this page. What garden visitors are classified in 2 main families? Hesperioidae? No. Hold on. I can do this. Hesperioidea and Papilionioidea. Want to look at it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bees and wasp.
Okay, let's see. Ooh, no. Butterflies.
I was close. I had an insect.
Yeah, true. What berry has the highest antioxidant content?
I believe it's a blueberry.
Oh, close.
Raspberry.
That was my guess too. Oh, raspberry's even closer. Blackberry.
No. So much better than both blueberries and blackberry, or blueberries and raspberries anyway.
Oh no, I love blueberries the best. Number 3. What is the largest dinosaur so far discovered? He is holding his hands up literally at me like.
When was this book written, first of all? Because that might have changed in the past 10 years.
Well, yeah, it's been longer than 10 years. This was published in...
Not that I'm going to get this right anyway.
I don't know. I've at least heard of this one.
A brachiosaurus?
Yes.
Is it really?
Yes, it really is.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, good guess. Number 4. What is the only dog rated above the basset hound for its
beagle.
sense of smell?
A beagle?
Oh, no. Bloodhound.
I challenge that. I have a beagle at home, and we were walking my beagle, and Thomas can attest to this. His mom, God rest her soul, can attest to this too. She was with us. We were walking in a field one day with him at the old apartment complex, and Duke dragged him across the field and found the only sole surviving French fry in the field and ate it. So I am telling you right now, my beagle has a great sense of smell.
Well, apparently it's not quite as good as a basset hound or a bloodhound, according to Trivial Pursuit, at least. No, I was assuming beagle as well. Okay. Number 5. What is defined as a ferrous alloy with a minimum of 10% chromium content? Oh. Okay.
Is it steel?
That's close. That was my guess too. Stainless steel. I don't know that's
okay.
Essential to it, but yeah.
I mean, I knew it's an iron composition.
Yeah. Number 6, last question. Which was the first iPod without a screen or scroll wheel? Oh.
An iPod Mini?
It was the iPod Shuffle.
Okay.
I've just vaguely remember that. It was like the little one that just...
It was like the size of a small little square.
Yeah, and had no screen. Nobody really wanted it, I think, because it wasn't...
I thought that one had a wheel on it, though. Because how did you control it?
I think it was just an up and down button.
Oh.
Or maybe it was just volume control then.
So I want to say that this book predates iPhones.
Yeah.
Because if the iPod is the technology that's relevant in it.
Well, no, 2010. First
still,
iPhone came out in what,
2007? Okay,
2007?
still, but iPhones were not.
Yeah.
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 I mean, even iPads were not what they are nowadays back then.
No. Well, I don't think the iPad had come out in 2010. I think that was a little later.
Okay, I know in 2014 I had one for school.
Yeah.
And I did not use it because I was like, what is this? I was like, I have no use for this.
I bought an iPad one because I was a nerd and I was...
No, you were an Apple junkie.
An Apple nerd.
Okay.
I desperately want an Apple Vision Pro. Can I tell you how obsessed I am with that?
Well, your bank account would differ.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why I don't... That's the only reason I don't have one already.
Okay, what category?
Although that Christmas bonus is starting to look pretty...
Your Christmas bonus needs to be applied to other things. Be an adult.
Yes, Dad.
Get the jet ski first.
Jet ski?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, what category? Sports and leisure.
God, no.
I got that one.
Let's do history again.
Okay.
I like history. I don't always know it, but...
Okay, I'll even let you pick your own page. How about that?
Oh, no, I don't care.
Okay, fine.
Anything. What? Don't go flipping pages now.
I'm not. Okay. Where does Pennsylvania's most famous groundhog reside?
Puxatawny.
Oh, I picked the wrong page. I went 2 pages. I was like, it says none. That's not right. That's not the right page. Yes, you are correct. Okay. What was the popular name for the European Economic Community?
The European Economic Community?
Mm-hmm.
Was that the International Monetary Fund, the IMF?
No.
Oh, no, that's still around.
It's very similar to our stock market, but...
Oh, I have no idea.
The common market.
The common market. Oh, that's a good little restaurant back in Charlotte. Anyway.
Where is the cereal capital of the world?
Oh, wait.
It's where Kellogg's is based.
Yeah. I'm wanting to say Hershey, Pennsylvania, but that's
it's not. That's the chocolate.
That's chocolate. I've known this. Is it Ohio? Someplace in Ohio?
No.
Oh, where is it?
It's Battle Creek, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
What triumphant arc became an east-west German border crossing in December of 1989?
Is that the Brandenburg Gate?
Yes.
Ah.
How the hell do you know that?
West Wing.
How did the founder of Vassar College accumulate his wealth?
Oh. Railroad tycoon?
No, I had to get my eyes open for that one.
Oh.
It says he's a brewer.
Oh, okay.
I thought it said he was a beaver.
Building dams then, apparently.
That's right. That's how he got his wealth. Who was Elizabeth I's father?
Henry VIII.
Yes. Okay.
That was it?
Yep. That was it.
Okay.
Da, 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 da.
What is that?
I don't know.
All right. Well, that's all for episode 7 of From Art to Atoms,
The Ultimate Curiosity Show.
Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us next week for
Episode 8.
Episode 8.
Yep. Yay.
See you then.
Bye. You've been listening to From Art to Atoms, The Ultimate Curiosity Show, episode number 8. Your host are Brandon Shoemaker and myself, Michael Fultz. The show is produced by Brandon Shoemaker and is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show to stay up to date on all of our latest episodes and news. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggested topics you'd like for us to dive into, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at FromArtToAtoms@gmail.com. We would love to hear from our listeners, and we value your input. Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and behind-the-scenes content. You can find us on Instagram at From Art to Atoms. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platforms. Your support helps us reach even more interested minds like yours. Thanks for tuning in this week, and as always, stay curious.